Never give a second chance to your family. I did and regretted it for the rest of my life, until I made one change that made them crawl back to me like babies. They stood on my doorstep just before dusk, like vultures circling something they thought was already dead. I hadn't seen them in years. Not since the day they turned their backs on me when I needed them most. The same bloodline that once called me brother, son, cousin, now stood with painted regret, as if their sneers and silence from years ago had never happened. I opened the door without a word, letting them step in not because I wanted to, but because something inside me, perhaps weakness, perhaps habit, said to give them another chance. The same mistake I had made once already, back when I lost everything, job, house, even my dignity. It wasn't strangers who cut the deepest. It was family. My own brother laughed when I asked to crash on his couch for a week. My sister told our relatives I was a leech and warned them not to answer my calls. They spread rumors that I gambled away my savings, told others I brought shame, all while I was fighting every day just to eat. When I needed help, they locked their doors and talked about me behind them. But I didn't stay broken. I found work, low pay, hard hours, but work. I taught myself skills people laughed at: coding, logistics, networking. Every dollar I earned, I treated like gold. I slept on warehouse floors, learned how to repair things others threw out. I sold what I could fix. I reinvested. Slowly, things turned. I started a business, then another. One failed. Two took off. Within 6 years, I had more than I ever dreamed: real estate, patents, liquid assets. And when the news reached them, the ones who had abandoned me remembered my name again. They reached out with warm voices, words dipped in honey, claimed they'd changed, said they'd made mistakes. My brother even cried in front of me, asking for a second chance to be part of my journey again. It didn't take long for the phone calls to turn into weekend visits. The same house they once mocked me for not having became their new favorite gathering spot. I let them in. I believed in rebuilding. At first, it seemed harmless. They came for meals, dropped compliments, brought their kids around like we were one big loving family. But I saw it happening again. Money started disappearing. My cousin asked for a loan that never came back. My sister helped herself to my safe, claiming she thought it was a family emergency fund. They started mocking the way I dressed, the way I worked, even the people I trusted. Behind my back, they laughed, thinking I couldn't hear, thinking I was too soft to confront them. It took everything in me not to erupt. But I waited, observed. I didn't just listen to what they said. I documented it. I let them show their hands. And when they did, I made one change: quiet, clean, irreversible. I met with my lawyer, rewrote everything. My will, my estate plans, every financial thread. I moved my assets into a private trust with a clause that required verified, sustained loyalty, not family ties, to access assent. No blood relation had any claim anymore. I added new beneficiaries, those who'd helped me when I was nameless and broke. Then I took it a step further. I sold my house, bought property 3 states away, new address, new name on the mailbox, new phone number. No warning. I vanished from their radar overnight. For 6 months, silence. Then it hit them. When they tried to cash in on my life again and found empty doors and redirected mail, the panic started. One by one, they tried to reach me. Calls from unknown numbers flooded my new line. Emails from addresses I didn't recognize. Messages dripping with remorse, apologies, and desperation. My kids miss you. We were wrong. Let's start over. But I'd already started over, without them. Their words meant nothing now. They had taught me what to do with second chances. Never give them to people who use your kindness as an opening for cruelty. They thought I'd be easy to find. They underestimated how far I'd go to ensure they could never reach me again. The day I left, I burned the trail behind me so completely that even if they followed every clue, they'd end up staring at locked doors and unfamiliar names. I didn't leave forwarding addresses. I shut down social media accounts, erased digital footprints, switched banks, even swapped cars. Not because I was scared, but because I wanted silence. Real silence. the kind that can't be faked. The first email came from my brother, subject line blank, like he didn't know what to say. Inside were 10 paragraphs pretending to be from a man who'd spent years hating me. "I've changed," he wrote. "We miss you." Funny how people start to miss what they thought was useless once they learn they can't have it anymore. I didn't reply. He followed with another message, then another. When I didn't respond, his tone shifted. Polite turned passive-aggressive. He asked if I was holding a grudge and said, "Family should forgive each other." As if the same man hadn't once said to my face, "You're just a disappointment waiting for a handout." Then came my sister. She tried the guilt approach, talked about her kids, how they asked about me, said she couldn't explain why Uncle just disappeared. I remembered clearly how she'd laughed when I showed her my first prototype for the company I built. She called it junk, said I should get a real job. And when it succeeded, she suddenly believed in me. They all did. After I was on magazine covers and listed in local business features, they saw something worth returning to. But none of them had been there when I slept in a storage unit during winter. None had offered help when I pawned my last watch just to pay for a week of groceries. Yet here they were again, knocking on doors I'd already locked. What they didn't know was that I'd planned for this. Months before I left, I created decoys, online aliases, dummy companies, redirection services. I hired a friend to act as my public-facing assistant, giving out an office number that never reached me. When they tried to contact me, all they got were polite responses from someone who claimed I was traveling, unavailable, too busy. It gave me distance, just enough to watch them scramble. They tried everything, calling old friends, messaging people I hadn't spoken to in years, even offering money to anyone who could connect them with me. My cousin tried to manipulate one of my former colleagues, pretending she wanted to collaborate on a business idea. The desperation made them sloppy, and I noted every attempt, every lie, every disguise they wore to claw back into my life. But I wasn't the same man they left behind years ago. I spent time building something not even they could break, a system. The trust one created had layers. No one could access it without 5 years of loyalty-based behavior tracked through independent agents. And those agents weren't strangers. They were people I trusted, who'd been with me when I had nothing to offer. I gave them instructions: observe, record, report. My family never knew they were being watched. When my cousin tried to act supportive by volunteering at one of my sponsored charities, it was a kindness. It was strategy, but I already knew her game. She never once mentioned me to anyone there, never asked about the foundation's mission. She only asked how she could get in touch with the founder. The moment she said those words, the staff flagged it. Her name was added to a list. The same list my sister joined when she tried to convince one of the foundation's board members to forward her message to me directly. She claimed to be worried about my health, claimed she heard I'd been depressed, isolated. It was an act. She was playing the long game, trying to guilt her way into my world. They didn't know I saw every move. I watched from a distance, quiet, calculated, detached. The same way they had once watched me fall apart and did nothing. One night, I got a call from a private number. I let it go to voicemail, then played it back. It was my brother. His voice cracked, maybe from exhaustion or fake emotion. I couldn't tell. He said he'd lost his job, his wife was thinking of leaving him, and he needed help. He didn't say please. He didn't apologize for the years he ignored me. He just said he needed a chance to make things right. I deleted the message. Then I got a package in the mail. No return address, but I knew who sent it the moment I saw the handwriting. My sisters. Inside were old photos of us as kids, birthdays, holidays. On the back of each, she'd scribbled a note. "Remember this? You were always my favorite. I miss this version of us." I remembered all of it, but none of the photos changed what happened later. None of those images erased the years they treated me like a stain on their reputation. Nostalgia doesn't overwrite betrayal. Still, I didn't respond. I waited. Weeks passed. More calls. More emails. Messages turned into paragraphs. Paragraphs into essays. My cousin even posted online pretending I was missing, trying to trigger public sympathy. She tagged my old company, saying she was concerned and needed to know if I was safe. That post was the final mistake, because now it wasn't about just me, it was an attempt to force their way in by using public pressure. So I responded, not to her, but through a public statement from my foundation. It was clean, professional, and devoid of any personal emotion. It read, "Our founder is safe, well, and focused on ongoing work in private. At this time, personal inquiries will not be addressed. Thank you for respecting privacy." Nothing more, just enough to end the speculation without opening the door. They knew then that I wasn't coming back. But the real shift happened when they found out they were completely cut off, not just from me, but from everything tied to me. No inheritance, no emergency access, no last-minute rights. I had erased their names from every legal document, every financial channel. The trust had already been activated. The money was protected, the assets locked, and they were on the outside. That's when the rage started. They stopped pretending. My brother left a voicemail, this time filled with blame. Said I was being cruel. Said I was punishing them for things that happened years ago. He accused me of being paranoid, of forgetting what family meant. My sister wrote a bitter letter, calling me cold-hearted and accusing me of turning my back on those who loved me first. But love doesn't look like abandonment. Love doesn't vanish when things get hard. And real family doesn't treat you like trash when you're down, only to crawl back when you're up. They never understood that. I gave them a second chance once. I welcomed them in when I had no reason to. They used me, mocked me, thought I'd never notice. But I did, and I remembered every word. The final message came from my aunt. She hadn't spoken to me in over a decade. She asked if I could reconsider. Said family ties should mean something. I stared at her message for a long time. Then I archived it, along with every other message before it. It started with a letter from a lawyer, not mine, theirs. I received it through one of the P.O. boxes I'd kept open under a random name. They'd gone that far now, trying to reach me legally. The letter was full of carefully constructed language, arguing that my actions had caused emotional distress and had potentially violated family obligations under moral expectations. It was laughable. They were trying to guilt-trip me through legal jargon, forgetting that morality has no place in a system that had already judged and executed my worth long ago. I scanned the document, filed it away, and carried on with my life. The attempts kept coming, not as aggressive, but relentless. My brother reached out to the charity again, pretending to want to donate in my honor. A thinly disguised move to get anyone to put him in front of me. He even showed up at the charity's headquarters one afternoon, told the receptionist he was my only sibling and had urgent family news. The staff, trained and instructed, followed protocol. They sent him away politely, but they took a photo, sent it to me. I barely recognized him. He looked tired, thinner, desperate. But it wasn't age or grief or regret. It was the absence of access. They were suffocating without the benefits they once had by proximity. My house, my name, my bank account, my recognition, none of it belonged to them anymore. And that absence had become unbearable. But none of this shook me. I had already closed that chapter. I had spent too long rebuilding something they helped destroy. I wouldn't let pity erase that fact. So I prepared one final move. Over the years, I had built more than wealth. I had invested in systems, silent partnerships, real estate under holding companies, businesses that ran with or without me. I shifted them all under the final layer of protection, a foundation I established in full secrecy, operating under a board I selected, bound by rules I wrote. The charter was clear. No relative, by blood or marriage, could serve on it. No person with a personal connection to me could override its structure. It would outlast me. It would grow without me. I named it the Restoration Project. Its mission was simple: help those who'd been thrown away by the people closest to them, survivors of neglect, betrayal, and abandonment. People who rebuilt themselves from rock bottom without applause. The overlooked, the discarded, the ones who weren't lucky enough to have a safety net. I poured my remaining assets into it: retirement funds, property deeds. ownership shares. Everything was converted, protected, and passed on to a future where my family could never reach. Not a cent of it could be undone. Then I did the last thing I needed to do. I went back, not physically, but in the records. I found old accounts, videos, letters, photographs, every piece of my life before the fall. I sorted it into 3 folders. The first went into a fire. The job termination letters, eviction notices, humiliating text exchanges, gone. I didn't want to remember those moments anymore. They weren't a warning. They were weights. The second folder, photos with my family, childhood events, vacations, went into a sealed envelope marked, "Never again." I mailed it to myself, to one of the addresses under my new name. It would arrive, sit unopened in a drawer, and gather dust. I needed a physical reminder of the past I never wanted to re-enter. The third folder, documents of my rise, letters from people who had helped me, journals from the nights I couldn't sleep, was digitized and locked in cloud storage. It wasn't for public eyes. It was for me, not to celebrate, but to remember what it really took to build again without a net. Then I wrote one final message, not for them, but for myself. I gave more than I received. I forgave more than I should have. I trusted more than they deserved. But I learned, and that lesson became freedom. It wasn't dramatic, just true. After that, I stopped checking the old P.O. box, changed the final phone number that still forwarded messages from the past, closed the last bank account that had ever touched their names. The last thread was cut, completely. Months passed, not a single sound from them anymore. Either they gave up or finally understood the silence wasn't temporary. It was permanent. I moved again. Not because I was running, but because I wanted to choose one place for myself with no memory tied to it. A town where nobody asked questions, where nobody cared what I had, what I lost, or who I used to be. I bought a modest home near the edge of a small, quiet community. Enough space to breathe, not enough to show off. My days were slow, predictable, and peaceful. I walked in the mornings, worked in the afternoons, read at night. Nobody knew who I was. I was no longer a story or a disappointment or a target. I was just a man, and that was enough. Then one afternoon, a letter showed up. This one wasn't from any family member. It was from a kid, 16, part of a scholarship program funded by the foundation I'd built. He didn't know who I really was, just that someone gave him a chance when nobody else did. He wrote about how he'd been kicked out at 14, how he slept behind a gas station until a local shelter helped him get back into school, how he had just been accepted to college. His last line read, "You didn't just give me help. You made me believe I could matter again." I folded the letter and kept it, not because I needed praise, but because it confirmed everything I'd done was worth it. My family never came back after that. Or maybe they did, and I just never heard. Either way, I didn't care anymore. They taught me everything I needed to know about second chances, who to give them to, and who to never look at twice.